What if the moment you've been waiting for, the moment where everything finally makes sense, has been here all along, hidden in plain sight? Most people don't recognize it, not because it isn't there, but because they're not ready to see it. Change is never about waiting for life to hand you the right circumstances. It's about reaching that silent breaking point, the one no one else can see, where the weight of your own excuses becomes unbearable. You've felt it before. The late nights where your thoughts won't quiet down, the mornings where you look in the mirror and wonder if this is really the life you were meant to live. The truth is, change never arrives with applause or a clear sign. It arrives quietly, disguised as discomfort, dissatisfaction, or even heartbreak. And most people run from it, numb themselves, or blame the world for their pain. But those who stop running, those who choose to face the reflection honestly, discover that everything they've been searching for begins on the other side of that choice. The question is not whether life is ready to change for you. The question is, are you finally ready to change for life? We grow up with the illusion that change will arrive when the world finally opens its doors to us. We're told to wait for the right time, the right person, the right opportunity, as though our lives are puzzles waiting for the missing piece to appear from somewhere outside of us. And so we wait, often impatiently, yet secretly comforted by the idea that we don't need to take responsibility until fate decides it's our turn. But what if fate has already spoken? What if the doors have always been there, but we refuse to push them open because we fear what's on the other side? The truth is hard to swallow. We hide behind external circumstances because it's easier to blame the world than to face the mirror. The conflict doesn't lie in life's unfairness. It lies in our reluctance to confront the truth that we are capable of more, but afraid of what that more demands from us. We cling to the idea that circumstances define us, and yet, if we look closely, history is filled with people who thrived in conditions far worse than ours. Why is it that some rise while others remain paralyzed? Because the difference is not opportunity, it's perspective. Machiavelli spoke of human nature as fragile and self-serving, but he also knew that power belongs to those who can detach from illusions. The illusion we carry is that life is waiting to bless us when we are worthy enough. But life isn't a parent granting permission. It's a battlefield where waiting is the same as surrendering. And still, we hold back, afraid to shed the skin of who we've been because that identity, even when it hurts, is familiar. We'd rather stay in the comfort of our cages than risk freedom that feels uncertain. This is where the real conflict sharpens. We are not fighting against the world's obstacles, but against the stories we've whispered to ourselves for years. Stories like, "I'm not ready yet," or "maybe when things calm down." They sound harmless, even responsible, but beneath them lies a truth we rarely admit. We are terrified of change because it means letting go of the person we've carefully built to survive. And survival feels safer than growth. Growth demands risk, failure, and exposure. It demands we step out into the unknown with no guarantees. The person you are today was crafted by choices you made to endure what life handed you. But the person you could become is waiting for choices rooted in courage, not survival. The conflict is internal, and until we win that battle, no external victory will ever satisfy us. The human mind is masterful at creating barriers disguised as logic. We convince ourselves we're too busy, too unprepared, too tied down to responsibilities to make real change. But look closer, and you'll see those are not facts. They are shields we build to protect ourselves from accountability. Imagine if you stopped telling yourself these stories. Imagine if you stripped away every excuse and looked at your life for what it is, not a chain holding you down, but a mirror reflecting your decisions. That realization stings, because it means we are both the prisoner and the jailer. And yet, within that sting lies liberation. If you built the cage, you can also dismantle it. But dismantling means confronting fears you've hidden from for years, and few are willing to face their own shadows. What makes this conflict so paralyzing is that it's invisible. You don't see chains around your hands, but you feel them every time you hesitate. You don't see bars in front of your eyes, but you feel them when your vision of the future shrinks into something smaller than your dreams. And because the prison is built inside the mind, most never escape. They age within walls they've created, walls made of doubts and what-ifs. Some even convince themselves that this prison is noble, that sacrificing dreams for safety is maturity. But deep down, you know maturity is not avoidance. It's not hiding behind fear while pretending you've chosen a sensible path. True maturity is facing reality without illusions, admitting the conflict exists within you, and deciding to confront it instead of burying it. The frightening part is that change always requires loss. That is why so many resist it, even when they know their current path is draining them. To change means killing off the version of yourself that has kept you safe up until now. It means letting go of identities tied to careers, relationships, or habits you've outgrown. And death, even metaphorical death, feels terrifying. So we cling, we stall, we rationalize, because staying the same feels easier than grieving who we were. But here's the secret. Until you allow that version to die, you'll never be reborn into who you could be. The conflict is not really between old and new. It's between comfort and truth. Comfort will keep you breathing. Truth will make you alive. And so, the deepest conflict of all is not with society, not with fate, not even with other people. It is with the self you have built out of fear, standing in the way of the self you could become through courage. Every excuse, every hesitation, every delay is just a way of protecting that fragile identity you've spent years maintaining. But life does not reward maintenance. It rewards evolution, and evolution will never happen until you're brave enough to lose what you know, to step into uncertainty, and to accept that the person you are right now is only a fraction of what you are meant to be. The real battle is not out there. It is within you, right now, in the silence where no one else is watching. There are moments in life where you silently compromise with yourself. You tell yourself that staying in a job you hate is temporary, that enduring a relationship that drains you is better than being alone, that postponing your dreams is a reasonable sacrifice for stability. These compromises begin small, almost invisible, but they accumulate like dust on glass, dimming the light you once carried. At first, you don't notice it. You go through routines, smile when required, and convince yourself this is what adulthood looks like. But late at night, when the noise fades and you're left with your own reflection, there's a voice inside that whispers, "This isn't who you are." Most of us silence that voice, because listening would mean admitting the truth, that the life we are living is too small for the soul within us. And so, we numb ourselves with distractions, hoping the whisper goes away. But the whisper never disappears. It grows louder in moments of stillness, in the quiet drive home, in the empty spaces between conversations. That's the irony of struggle. It isn't always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's the slow erosion of your spirit, the gradual realization that the life you've built doesn't match the person you want to be. You look around and see people who appear content, and you wonder why you can't seem to accept the same script. Maybe it's because part of you refuses to surrender, even when you pretend otherwise. This conflict between appearance and truth creates an ache that no external success can heal. You can earn the promotion, wear the smile, play the role, but inside the unrest remains. That unrest is not weakness. It is the soul's way of calling you back to yourself. Transformation often begins with collapse, not triumph. For some, it comes through heartbreak, the shattering of a love they thought would last forever. For others, it's the sudden loss of stability, a job ending, a dream failing, a friendship dissolving. In those moments, the mask slips, and the illusion that everything is under control crumbles. At first, it feels like devastation, but in reality, it is revelation. It's the universe tearing away the safety nets you've used to avoid facing your truth. Pain is often the greatest teacher because it strips away excuses. You can no longer lie to yourself when everything familiar falls apart. What you once clung to for identity no longer exists, and in that void you finally glimpse who you could become. The collapse is not the end. It is the beginning of seeing clearly. Think back to the times where you hit rock bottom. Maybe you thought it was the end of everything, but now, looking back, you realize it was the start of your awakening. That breakup forced you to confront the parts of yourself you ignored. That rejection taught you resilience you didn't know you had. That failure redirected you toward a path you would have never dared to choose on your own. It doesn't make the pain any less real, but it reveals its purpose. Transformation rarely arrives in comfort. It arrives in the moments where you feel stripped bare, exposed and uncertain, and yet those are the moments you will look back on and whisper, "That was the turning point." Because struggle, when faced instead of avoided, becomes the raw material of strength. The tragedy is that many people never reach this point because they refuse to let struggle teach them. Instead, they bury their pain under endless noise. They drown it in distractions, in shallow relationships, in overworking, in substances, anything to avoid facing the truth. But avoidance only prolongs suffering. Transformation requires courage. The courage to sit with the pain long enough to hear what it's trying to say. The courage to admit, I am not living the life I was meant for. But I can choose differently. This moment of honesty is terrifying because it leaves you with no one to blame, no excuses left. But it is also liberating. Once you admit the truth, you're no longer bound by the false narratives you've carried. You are free to start rewriting your story. What makes transformation so profound is that it is deeply personal. No one else can do it for you. People can inspire you, encourage you, or even challenge you, but only you can choose to face the discomfort of growth. That's why some people will live their entire lives repeating the same cycles, while others, faced with the same pain, will rise. The difference is not in the weight of their struggles, but in the willingness to see those struggles as invitations to grow. Every scar you carry is a testament not just to survival, but to the possibility of transformation. They remind you that pain did not destroy you, it shaped you. And in that shaping, you found pieces of yourself you never knew were there. When you finally embrace transformation, you realize the struggles you once cursed were actually the very moments that cracked your shell open. Without them, you might still be asleep, numbing yourself through life, unaware of your own potential. The heartbreak taught you love doesn't come from clinging, but from wholeness. The failure showed you that your worth isn't tied to outcomes, but to effort and resilience. The loneliness revealed that your own company was enough. That solitude is not emptiness, but strength. Transformation is rarely glamorous, but it is always honest. And when you finally step into it, you stop running from yourself. You realize that every struggle was a message, every collapse a doorway, every scar a map guiding you home to who you really are. There is a strange kind of silence that follows pain, a silence that feels unbearable at first. You sit with it, thinking it's emptiness, but over time you realize it's not emptiness at all. It's clarity. In that silence, the noise of the world, the expectations of others, and the endless chatter of self-doubt begin to fade. What remains is something raw, unfiltered, and honest. It is you, stripped of all pretenses. For the first time, you notice the strength that has always been there, hidden beneath the layers of fear and performance. Inner strength does not shout. It does not demand recognition. It reveals itself in the quiet decision to rise after you've fallen, in the small moments where you choose to keep moving even when no one is watching. That is awakening. Not the grand gesture of becoming someone new, but the quiet realization that you were always more than what you believed. Scars play a role in this awakening. At first you hate them. You hide them, hoping no one sees the evidence of your breaking. But in time you learn they are not marks of weakness. They are maps. Each scar tells a story, not of defeat, but of survival. They are proof that pain came and went, but you remained. The scars remind you that you are still standing, even when you thought you wouldn't. And suddenly, what once embarrassed you becomes a source of pride. You no longer fear the scars, because they speak of resilience. They show that you have lived, you have fought, and you have endured. And within that endurance, you begin to sense a light, a quiet, flickering flame that whispers, "You are stronger than you think." That flame is your awakening. Awakening is rarely a lightning bolt. It is more like dawn, the slow rising of light after a long night. You may not notice it at first, but one day you wake up and realize the darkness isn't as heavy as it once was. You begin to see possibilities where before you saw only dead ends. You start to understand that solitude isn't loneliness, but a sacred space where your soul can breathe. The silence that once frightened you becomes your companion, your sanctuary. You realize that every moment alone was never wasted. It was building you, teaching you to hear your own voice without the interference of others. In that quiet, you stop begging for validation because you finally recognize your own worth. Awakening is not about finding something new. It is about seeing what was always inside you, waiting for you to notice. When you awaken, the world around you begins to shift, not because it has changed, but because you see it differently. The insults, the judgments, the opinions that once pierced your heart now pass by like echoes, unable to touch the core of who you are. You learn that strength is not about control or dominance. It's about unshakable presence. It's the calm in your eyes when others try to provoke you. The stillness in your spirit when the world is chaotic. This kind of strength doesn't need an audience, because it is not performance. It is authenticity. The awakening is realizing that you no longer need to prove yourself. The battle for validation ends, and in its place comes peace. That peace is unshakable, because it does not come from the outside. It comes from within. Every awakening feels like a rebirth. You see yourself differently. The scars, the silence, the solitude, they all become part of your armor, but not an armor that makes you hard or cold. It is an armor of softness and resilience combined, proof that you can bend without breaking. You realize that pain was not your enemy but your teacher, that loneliness was not a punishment but preparation, that every closed door was not rejection but redirect. This perspective shift is the essence of awakening. It transforms suffering into wisdom and weakness into strength. You start to understand that what you thought was destroying you was actually shaping you into someone unbreakable. That realization is not loud or dramatic. It comes like a whisper, and once you hear it, you cannot unhear it. Inner strength is not something you acquire, it's something you uncover. It was always there, waiting beneath the surface. Life's trials don't give it to you. They simply strip away the illusions that kept you from seeing it. This is why awakening feels so profound. It's not about becoming someone else. It's about returning to who you were before fear took over. Before the world convinced you to shrink. Before you forgot your own power. Awakening is the process of remembering. Remembering that you are more resilient than your failures, more worthy than your wounds, more powerful than your doubts. And once you remember, you cannot return to who you were. You've outgrown the old skin, and no matter how much comfort it once provided, it no longer fits. The beauty of awakening is that it doesn't just change how you see yourself, it changes how you live. You stop rushing, you stop competing, you stop comparing your path to others. Instead, you begin to walk with intention, with presence, with quiet confidence. You no longer seek to escape your scars because you see them as part of your beauty. You no longer fear solitude because you know your own company is enough. You no longer cling to external validation because your worth is anchored within. This is the freedom that inner strength gives you, the freedom to live unapologetically without the constant hunger for approval. And that freedom is the truest form of power. Not the power to control the world, but the power to remain unshaken within it. Change is not a thunderstorm that arrives to shatter the sky. It is the quiet revolution that begins in the stillness of your own heart. You come to realize that no external event, no applause and no validation will ever create the transformation you've been waiting for. It is born the moment you stop running from yourself and finally decide to face the truth. The revolution is not about proving people wrong or showing the world your worth. It's about no longer betraying your own soul. For years, you've looked outside for signs, for permission, for someone to tell you that it's finally your turn. But awakening whispers something different. No one is coming to save you, and no one needs to, because everything you've been searching for has always been within you. The resilience forged by your scars, the wisdom carved from your failures, the strength discovered in your silence. This is the power of inner transformation. It does not need witness. The world may not notice the moment you choose yourself, but you will. And once you taste the freedom of living in alignment with your truth, you cannot go back. The applause of others becomes irrelevant because the quiet approval of your own soul is louder than any crowd. The most radical act you can commit is not rising above others, but rising above the weaker version of yourself who once settled, once doubted, once hid. The world has taught you to chase recognition, to fight for validation, to measure your worth in comparison to others, but real freedom is when you no longer need to. That is the essence of transformation, the shift from seeking power outside to realizing the only true power exists within. Outward success may impress people, but inward liberation changes everything. It allows you to walk into any room with peace, to endure chaos without breaking, to hold love without clinging, and to pursue your dreams without fear of failure. This is not the kind of power that shouts, it's the kind that radiates, quietly, steadily, unshakably. And the call now is not to rush, not to force, but to trust. Trust that when you are truly ready to change, you will see clearly what was always hidden in plain sight. The path has always been there, waiting. The only question is whether you are ready to step onto it. Not for applause, not for validation, but for the silent, soulful revolution of becoming who you were always meant to be.